What's up, guys? Shawnthebro here. Today we are going to be taking a look at directional input attacks and directional inputs in general, for that matter. So what this actually means is if we use our basic attack, so this is our secondary attack. I've been calling it the medium attack, but this is basically like if you were to press Y in Mortal Kombat if you're playing on Xbox. Very specific example, I know, but I think you get what I'm trying to say here. So if you were to press right and Y, or right and E in my case, I do this crazy attack, which is actually just part of my combo animation that I botched for the purposes of this video. If I were to press back in my input, then I do an even different attack. So you have essentially 3 different attacks with one input based on the direction you are holding and or walking. So in this case, since we don't have any sort of blocking or anything to disable our movement while we're doing attacks, which we will get to, so don't worry, you will be basically walking every time you go to do these, and you can actually still walk through them, just because we haven't gotten there yet. But you'll be able to do 3 separate attacks based on the direction you're holding or not holding. And yeah, that's what we're going to do for today. This will set us up for the combo tutorial in the next episode. I wanted to get this out here so we know how to do basically attacks or inputs that have multiple steps, because we are going to need to use that on a higher level for combos. Okay, so let's get into the code aspect as we usually start with, and let's see what has changed. So first of all, and I don't like that. So what we do, or what I immediately think of, is instead of, you could set up a command list, and this is how we did it on Fury Strike. You could set up a command list where you check the inputs that you have given, right? So if the player has pressed right and A or something, then they do an attack, and that's fine. However, you're doing this weird kind of checking in a dictionary or a list for these inputs every time, and it's not really necessary. Now, when we do combos, that'll be a lot more relevant, but for now, all we really need to do is if we're moving left or moving right, or intending to move left or right, meaning we're holding left or right, and then we want to do this other attack. So it doesn't matter, we don't need to check inputs for this. We can make these very simple and also save a lot of processing speed by doing this. So basically, I made an Enum, okay, in my character, and I call it E-directional input. We have default, which means you're not moving, moving right, which is moving right, and moving left, which is moving left. So basically, if you're not pressing your left or right keys, this will be in the default state, and you'll be not moving, which means you will do your standard attack for that button. Then if you use an attack with that button, but you are moving either right or left, or again, just holding the keys that you would use to move right or left, then you can go ahead and do this other attack, this directional input attack. So that's the first thing. So go ahead and make this. Make sure it's out of your U class. That's usually a pretty confusing thing for people when they start Unreal. The way U enums work, they're kind of their own class. So basically you have to put it out of this U class, otherwise it will complain at you. You can do some weird stuff to actually make it work, but it's not really worth it, in my opinion. So there you go. And let's go ahead and look at the new variable. So I added a comment to this one. I try to comment a lot of the code here for you guys, and for myself, of course, but this one is pretty important. So I made an instance of the Enum. E-directional input is my Enum. Directional input. I just said the direction of the character is moving, or the direction the player is holding down. Could be stationary due to blocking or other reasons. So yeah, since right now we don't have it set up so when you use attack you stop moving. However, we absolutely should. And it's going to happen in the next episode because we're going to need it to happen. We're going to need it to work for combos to work appropriately. So we will fix that in the next episode. But for now, you don't necessarily have to do anything with it. Just know that, again, we don't have to actually be walking to trigger these attacks. If you want to set that up, that's fine. I will actually show you exactly where to do that. But for now, if I'm holding right and I press this key, then I want to do this attack instead of my standard attack with that key, okay? Lastly, and you don't have to do this, but I did go ahead and add these. So I called these was first attack used, was second attack used before. I went ahead and changed these to was light attack, medium, heavy, and special attack used, because that's going to be basically my 4 main keys. We'll have a throw, which might be a combination of the keys, or maybe even a separate key, or whatever. And we'll have block and stuff. But as far as attacks go, I think there's only going to be 4 attack buttons. And then if we do like an actual super move, or we're gonna have jump attacks, crouch attacks, or directional input attacks we're doing here, combos, specific inputs. So I think 4 basic attacks is plenty. And I think that's about as much as you would get with most games, even a little bit more. Like specifically with Smash, you only get 2, right? And everything is based on directional input after that. So, okay. So go ahead and add these if you want. You can change the names if you want from first attack, second attack. Those were pretty bad names, let's be honest. I just didn't know what to call them at the time. I called them this. Still not really great names, but that's probably how they'll stay until the end of the project. Because they do at least help you understand what I'm going for. If we go to the C++, the CPP file, then go ahead and do what you would always do and set these to be false. And go ahead and set your directional input to your default, which is not moving. I do want to have a quick note here. So some people said that when I did F-transform with 3 floats as zeros, there's one at compile. I'm not sure what that's about, honestly. I didn't get any more information than that. But you should be able to do just an F-transform with no input, and it should compile. I went ahead and changed it for the purposes of the tutorial. That way no one runs into any issues. So sorry if you're running into that issue from the last episode when we were setting the transform to flip the player. But I don't believe it will give you any issues if you're on the same version of Unreal I am. Which honestly I can't remember. I think I'm 4.21.2, I want to say. I don't know. But anyway, I'll find it for you in a second. But the important part here is just, if this is giving you trouble and you can't build with it, just take out the zeros. You can use it like this. It'll work just fine. I'm just used to putting in an initializer list, which is what this is called. So anyway, just a quick note I wanted to add. Alrighty, so there's going to be basically one main section of code here we're going to add today. It's pretty simple, and it's not very intensive at all. And here's where I also account for controllers, or for if the player is actually moving, okay? So right now, we go ahead and say, if we're moving right, which is done automatically if you've been using the template character that we've been using this whole time, moving right is done automatically by Unreal, right? It's done automatically in the template. So when you press this key, then we call this function. And then we just move right. It's the reason your characters can move right at the start of the game. So that's simple enough. But what it does have is a value. So we can use this value to determine how far over the button is pressed. Now on a keyboard specifically, you can only have a value of -1, 0, and 1 because there's no half press. At least on any keyboard that I know. Maybe there are keyboards that allow for that. But this value will go from all the way from -1 to 1 with all the values in between if you're using something like a joystick. Depending on where you are in the curve, you could be at 0.75, -0.75, whatever. Okay, so that's the whole reason I'm going to do this right here. If you plan to only use this on a keyboard, use this game on a keyboard, you could go ahead and skip some of this. You could just basically check if this was greater than 0 or less than 0 or exactly 0 to get your 3 results. But because I plan on allowing controller support or other device support, I wanted to kind of account for it early. You can also use this to account for if the player is actually walking as opposed to if they're just pressing the button. Because you could put a threshold, and if the threshold is only so much, then we can start walking, and then if the threshold is only that much, then you set the input, right? So that should make sense. I just put 0.2 because I felt like on a joystick, 0.2 of the way would not be very far, and maybe your character wouldn't necessarily be walking yet, or maybe you'd be spamming buttons, and you don't necessarily want to be walking, you're just trying to enter some combo input. So I think that's a good value. Basically, if it's greater than 0.2, I'm considering that moving right. We're pressing right. And again, if you're on the keyboard, it'll be a solid 1, so it'll definitely be greater than 0.2. And same with the else if here. Basically, we're checking if the value is less than negative 0.2, which means we're holding left. We're trying to move left. If it's neither of those, then we're going to call it 0. Or not 0, but we're going to call it not moving. So if it's less than 0.2, but greater than negative 0.2, we're not moving. That will also account for a little bit of controller drift, if your controller has any. So if your joystick automatically moves on its own a bit to try and sit into place, it should account for this unless your drift is terrible. And there you go. So that's pretty simple. I also added a log, which you can do. I forget if I've gone over this, but when you do percent and then a letter, like F, that's percent float, this will print out the value after the parenthesis, comma, that you give it. So the directional input is, and it's saying, look for a float, value's a float. So give it value, and it will tell us a value of either -1 to 1. And I can show you in the log when we're testing it. Again, you don't have to worry about this now if you don't want, but since I changed the attack names, I want to show you. Now, if you were using the was first attack used, you can go ahead and update all your functions to the new names if you'd like. You don't have to, but just want to point that out. And that should be everything for the code. There's not too much to do on the Enum BP side, but I do have a few optimizations in here as well that I should have been doing from the beginning, but you live and you learn, right? Okay, so here's how we're going to start. In our Enum BP for the mutant, we were doing this update animation function, which is running basically all the time. Basically, anytime that model is being shown, even now in the engine, it is running, you can see. That's how you get this right here. So, we were doing a cast in there every time, which is honestly pretty terrible, not going to lie to you. And I never really thought a second time about it, because in Fury Strike we had that, but we should be setting a reference. We should cast once, get our reference, and then use the reference the rest of the way. That'll save literally hundreds of thousands of casts over the playtime. So, let's do that. So go ahead, and where we were casting before, which would have been like right here, right after the comment blocks that I have, instead of casting to a fighter character, and I'll do you one better, we don't even need to cast to a fighter character. We might as well just cast the mutant character right off the bat. So go ahead, right-click, Event, Begin Play, Blueprint, Begin Play. Try to get Pawn Owner right here. Try to get Pawn Owner. Put that in as the object that you're going to cast to a mutant character. If it succeeds, you will get a mutant character reference. Now we will save a ton of casts and honestly clean up the code over there a bit, because we don't have to drag off this node. The rest of this is the same. But now you'll see every time I use this, the mutant character reference, I'm not using that big cast block. So now you can put this in as many times as you want. I actually use it in 2 different spots here. This stuff is all the same. This is the was first attack, was second attack used, overhauled to be was light attack used, was medium attack used, but now using the reference. And also, oh, and by the way, guys, sorry, if you want to add this mutant character reference, like I did here, what we set here, you can just go and add a variable, hit the plus, and look at the type. You type in the class name, mine is mutant character, and get an object reference. That's how I made that variable. Alright. Now, make sure you build Visual Studio and go through your basic stuff like you always do. I'm just going to build it because I added a space and it will complain I changed the code and didn't build it, so I don't want to hear it. There you go. Take your time. You're in no rush. There we go. And then you can, actually I don't think it was in the capture window, but then we got hot reload complete. So once you make sure you build and hit compile if needed, then you can go in here and make an Enum instance of your Enum class that we made. So remember we made this Enum class right here. if you go ahead and make sure, one more thing, make sure you have Enum blueprint type right above it. If you have this, you can actually use this class in Blueprint. So you do the same thing, you add a variable, and you look for it. Mine's directional input right here. Just go ahead and select that. And that's my directional input Enum. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to do the same thing here that we did for the was light attack used and things like that, right? So basically, we could skip making this Enum variable. However, when we're in the state machine, we don't want to be using this mutant character reference at all, or at least we want to use it less than we are. We can use it, no problem. And I might actually overhaul it in the next episode to not use these Enum variables, but to use this actual light attack used variable. I was trying to avoid casting and getting a reference in the state machine because that's generally, wrong G word, considered bad practice, but or at least the way I've been taught. But there is a way that I found that I really liked actually using it, and then it skips a lot of this junk. Like, you don't have to set this to true, set this back to false, set this Enum variable to true, set this back to false. So for this episode, we're going to keep it. If that bothers you as well, because it kind of bothers me, it's kind of annoying, then I think we'll fix that. I do have to look and make sure everything can work the way I believe it is, but I believe I have a method for that. So just leave it alone for now, and do this for now, just to make sure you can get it working. And we can do a simple overhaul later to remove the Enum variables and put them right in the state machine. All right. So real quick, before you go ahead and set the new variable you created, make sure you use your reference. Check if it's valid. If it's not valid, you'll get errors. And since this is basically a tick function, this will definitely run before your begin play runs. So you'll definitely get errors. So go ahead and make sure you check if it's valid, and only if it's valid, set your directional input. This is my directional input variable from my character class. Set your Enum variable based on that input, so it'll be not moving right or moving left. And since, again, this is a tick function, it'll keep updating it to the right value. Okay, so that's good. Let's go to the state machine, and we'll finish up with the state machine here, and this should be the last thing you need to make this work. So, with your state machine, what you can do is, I have my basic attack here, which I'm actually going to rename to light because I forgot. Light attack. And I'll call this medium attack. And move this over a bit. Okay, so I tried to position this in a way that you guys could understand it, because I know state machines are not the easiest thing to organize. But I think I have a pretty good method here, at least for today's episode, of showing you how exactly this would work. So our light attack and our medium attack will be the same basic thing. So if you're also just adding your second attack, here's how we do it. You have a state from idle and medium attack. And you can go ahead and look at this. Was medium attack used? Enum. That's just literally what we set over here, right? Was medium attack used? Enum. So just like the light attack, we do literally the same thing. Very simple. We just check if this boolean is true. If it's true, we go into this state. This state has an animation. Should actually probably take loop animation off, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, and then your return state is just automatic rule based over here. This basically means if there's no other state for it to go to other than the state it came from, and there's no other conditions, once the animation is done playing, it'll return back to idle. And you guys have seen that before, so no big deal there, but I just wanted to reiterate. So that's how you implement the medium attack, okay? That one's easy. You don't even need anything in the return. You just need to do the automatic rule-based. Now, what we're going to add today is the directional input attacks, and we're going to put them in so that we do the same input, but we check for the direction they're moving, or the direction they're pressing, okay? So if you go from idle to, I call it D-attack MR. This is probably going to be my standard from now on, so I'll go over this plenty of times, and you'll keep hearing this. But directional attack, medium right, because you could do directional attack, medium left. Maybe we are going to have a walking left and a walking right, and they are different from a directional attack of specifically like I'm standing still and I press right and attack at the same time. So I wanted to make it very clear but very specific what this is. Directional attack, medium right. What we're going to want to do is make sure that our medium attack used Enum is true, just like before. We have to make sure we're pressing the button that is actually going to use the attack. But we also want to grab our directional input Enum and go ahead and make sure the state is moving right. Do an AND boolean, so you can do AND right here. This guy. Just drag this result in here, and to get this node, you just pull off your enum and do equal equal. Equal enum is this right here, and then you can use the drop down to select the state you want to check against. So if this is moving right and we use the attack button, then the result is this. Make sure you drag it into result from the AND. Then we play this attack. So now put in your other animation. So this is my other animation. Okay. And that's pretty, I think that's pretty simple. I think that was not too bad, especially if you already had the medium attack working. It's just an extra condition. And then luckily, your condition back is the same thing. Just make it automatic rule based and you don't need to put anything inside of it. Okay, now directional attack medium left is the exact same thing, except I added even another animation. And back is again automatic rule based. And instead of looking for right, we're looking for moving right instead of looking for moving right, we're looking for moving left this time. So if this is true, then there you go. Then we play this animation. Whoops, I wish I knew what I was doing. There we go. Then we play this animation instead. All right, so there you go, guys. Make sure, this is important. So there's a few things, there's a few ways you could handle, there will be a bug here if you don't address this next part. So essentially you have it working now. You have it working to where you can actually use these different attacks. But there is one issue, and the only condition we have for this, for the regular medium attack, is just if medium attack was used. So it's automatically going to be true regardless of if this input is right or left. So which one goes first? Well, there's two ways to handle it. You could add, So if you could add this check again and just say not moving. But if you were to do that, that's kind of a lot of extra work, I feel like, for all your basic attacks. I mean, it's only 4 nodes, so it's not a huge deal at all. However, it will save you an extra check if you are to do this, because this check automatically happens. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. When you click on a transition node here, you have this thing called priority order. The lower the priority order, if a priority order is the same between two states, it will pick the one that the code just runs into first. Basically the one that has the least amount of conditions. So what we want to do is, if it can go to both these states at the same time, we want the more complex one, which is the directional attacks, to be a higher priority order. Okay? Or, excuse me, a lower priority order. A lower priority order. So the regular medium attack, I set to priority order 10. They're all 1 by default, but 10, and you could make it 2, whatever, it doesn't matter. But 10 is easier for me to see. It's like, oh, yeah, he's a really high one. I didn't want him to play. You know, he must have been playing at the same time another animation. I figure I would make him play later. So when I look at this, I'm like, oh, priority order 10. Okay, so there's other animations that can occur at the same time that we don't want to. So, for example, I want D-Attack MR to be 1 and D-Attack ML to be 1. Now, you could make these different values as well. However, if you're holding both your left and right keys in at the same time, I mean, I don't know what you want, right? So I'm not sure if you want one over the other if you're doing that. And for example, on a joystick or like on a controller, when you're holding left or right on your joystick, you won't be able to actually hold left and right. You'll have one or the other. So it won't really matter here for the directional input. So for the priority order of right and left, I'd say you can keep them the same. Feel free to change them. It won't hurt anything. But just make sure that any states that can happen at the same time, you check the priority order to make sure that they are in a way that you would like them to be. All right, guys. So that should get you to be able to use your directional inputs, which I'll go over one more time. So here's E, then I do right and E, and I do left and E. And there are 3 different attacks, same button, but depending on your direction or your movement. I think that was pretty good, pretty simple in terms of implementation. I do want to have an extra note about hitboxes, if you guys would care to pay attention. If not, if you don't care about hitboxes or they're just not relevant to you right now, that's fine. But I did go ahead and it's the same exact system, so don't worry, I didn't change any logic other than this branch. So last time I told you we would fix this in the next episode, and I was not lying. I know it doesn't quite fit with the episode, so I'm sorry about that, but I did want to show it. So now we have the characters flipping, but before, our hitbox was not flipping with us. So it was always going the wrong direction. But now we can make that work. All you have to do is copy this. If you were following the other hitbox tutorials, which I'll link in an iCard in the top right here, you'll see that we had this before. Go ahead and just change it, and just change the value from -100 to 100, or 100 to -100, depending on what was your default case and what direction you guys are facing by default in your Unreal project. And just depending on if you are flipped or not, based on the logic we set in the tick function last episode, right here is flipped. If it's flipped or not, set the hitbox location to these different values, either 100 or -100. So that's pretty simple. That's literally that change. I did change the actual look of the blueprint a bit because it was a little bit messy. I think that looks a bit better. But it's that simple of a change. You could multiply this by -1 and also get the same result. The reason I didn't is because if you have a character that is off-center, such as, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Skullgirls, but there's a character called Big Band, who is, his attacks are way, 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 way off-center from where he is actually at. And if you do that, -1 might not always get you the right answer. You might need the hitboxes positioned differently depending on if you're facing left or right. So I just made this a little bit more manual. It will take a little bit more work every time, but you can always get it right. Okay, so just make sure you set your hitboxes based on if it's flipped, and that's how you can fix that. And do the same for active as well. So guys, that is basically that's the tutorial for directional inputs. If you enjoyed, please let me know how you felt about it in the comments, because that helps me a ton. That lets me know how I'm doing, if there's any suggestions you have. But most importantly, and the thing you can do to help me most, is just subscribe to the channel. First of all, it will let you see everything that's actually going to be coming out. And it'll help me know, I can actually see the video you subscribe from, so it'll actually help me determine what videos you guys are enjoying the most here. So that would help a lot. Just being completely transparent, I would appreciate it, and hopefully if this helps you, you would love to see more. So there you go. Step 2 of this little outro thing, Discord. We have a Discord community, which I won't pull up because I don't want to expose anybody's names. But there's a link in the description, and unfortunately I can't link it in an iCard because it's broken and all that. But you can join our Discord community. There I will help you with any issues we have. So if you just click the link, accept the invite to the community, you can post your pictures, videos, and I can post pictures, videos back, as well as plenty of the other wonderful members of our community and our team here that can help you out with issues. We can help you solve your problems without just being like, hey, can you send me this exact way you did it over a YouTube comment? Because that's, that can be pretty confusing. So anyway, you can go ahead and join the Discord. We'd love to have you. We have about 70 members. So we have a really good community of people who are willing to help each other and are very interested in helping you solve your problems, and we can grow together as a community. Lastly, guys, if you're interested in seeing me on something other than YouTube and you want to see my actual face playing some games like Resident Evil, we have some fun, like where I have to play games with socks on my hands, or play without audio, or play with one eye shut, whatever. We have a lot of fun. So if you want to come see me on Twitch, I stream with some of my friends playing different games, usually Tuesday, Friday, Saturday. So that's Shawnthebro 27 if you're interested in checking us out. But we just got started about 2 months ago, and you guys keep coming from YouTube, and it's great to see you there. So I figured I'd, honestly, just keep advertising a bit here. So thanks, guys. Thanks for all the support in all aspects of this community. And in the next week's episode, we are going to be doing the combo tutorial for the fighter game. So look forward to that, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. I'm Shawnthebro. Goodbye.